If you thought we were done with shape layers, well, you're in for a surprise because there's a lot more that we can do with shape layers. And that's under this add button. They're kind of these shape effects, like I like to call them. So I've created this circle and I want you to do that right now. So go ahead and pause the video, do it, and then I'll tell you how to do it if you forget. So pause the video, create it. Okay, let's go. So hopefully you created it. I just added this background, and then with the shape layer, I created this circle using the shift click to create the perfect circle. And then I turned off the fill and I have the stroke set. I can set it 25. Awesome. So in our contents, we have our ellipse, which we've seen before, but we also have this add button. If we click that, we see a bunch of different options. We have things that we've seen before, like fill and stroke, but there's also these ones down here. If I click wiggle past, look what happens. It adds this animated sort of wiggle effect, and we can go in here and make it even more wiggly by changing the size. We can change the detail so there's a lot more of them. We can change the points so that's smooth instead of that sort of sharp edges, and we can play through it. So you get this sort of organic wiggle to this shape layer. And let me delete that wiggle path. Another one is this zigzag, which is similar, but it's not animated. So with the zigzag, I can go in here. We can create some zigzags. We can also animate these things. So if we want this sort of pow sort of look, we can create more ridges, create sort of a gear type thing. That's pretty cool too. Now this doesn't change with time. It's not animated, but it's just for style. One that I love that I'm going to use a lot in this course and for a lot of my projects is trim paths. So go ahead and click add trim paths. Now, nothing happens when you do that, but what you'll notice is that when you drop down trim paths, you have the start and end percentage. Click the end percentage and just drag, and you can see that we have this circle growing on with their percentage. This is how you can come up with some really intricate animations. So say we animate this, the end from 0, then to 1 second to 100. Now we have this circle being drawn on. And this will happen for any type of stroke or any shape that you create with the pen tool using the stroke. If it had a fill, let's just turn on a fill. You'll see what happens. I typically don't do this because it looks kind of funny, but maybe for one of your animations, you might want to use that. But I typically turn the fill off when I'm using trim paths. I'm going to easy ease these keyframes, selecting them, right-clicking, keyframe assistant, easy ease, so we get more of a little pop. Let's even go into our graph editor, make sure we're on the speed graph. Select these keyframes and drag them in to create more of that little pop action. Cool, that's pretty cool. And we can add some motion blur, make it a little bit more organic. That's pretty cool. Okay, so that's cool, but let's make this really intricate really fast. There's another thing in the add button called a group, and that allows us to group multiple shapes or multiple effects into sort of a folder. So if I take the ellipse and drag it into the group, and I also take the trim paths into the group, now those two things are combined, and we can actually copy and paste this group right within this shape layer. So I can duplicate it by pressing Command D or Control C, Control V to copy and paste on a PC. Let's open up Group 2, and now let's go into our ellipse in Group 2 under the transform properties for the ellipse and scale it down. Okay, so now we're scaling it down. We have 2 circles. Let's also play with the stroke of this one. So let's drop down the stroke. Let's make it even skinnier. So now if we play this, you can see that it's starting to get a little bit more interesting. Okay, that's cool. Let's duplicate this group 2 again. And then let's go into our ellipse 1. And actually, let's make this a little bit bigger. So into the transform ellipse 1, let's make it a little bit bigger like so. This looks kind of cool, but let's reverse this animation. So let's delete these keyframes. Now let's set the start to 100. So now we're going to animate the end from 100 to 0. So at this second point, we're going to set a keyframe for the end at 0%. Now let's go to 0 frames and set this to 100%. So now it's animating on the opposite way, like so. So let's play through this. Pretty darn cool. And of course, you can keep going, keep animating, keep duplicating, and that's how you get more intricate effects like this. We're going to continue on, but we'll also be covering some of these other effects in future lessons and real-world projects. Feel free to play around with them and just start creating your own motion graphics using things like the trim paths animations.